All right, guys, marriage maintenance day 2. Yesterday, we talked about 3 areas of intimacy we want you to connect daily. So we want this to be a 30-day thing where we intentionally build in some healthy rhythms or reestablish some healthy rhythms in these specific areas. So spiritual intimacy, we want you to be pursuing each other and to intentionally connect there, to pray together, or to study God's Word, to read, to fast, to do something together in this spiritual area of life, in the spiritual intimacy, and sharing these parts of your life that you don't share with anyone else. Emotional intimacy in the way that we talk, communicate, listen, celebrate, mourn, the way we process, the things that we do in this emotional part of life that we want to connect intimately in a way that we don't with anybody else besides our spouse. A third way that I want you to connect is physically, in the physical aspect of your marriage relationship, and that can be, a whole host of things. Certainly, that might be holding hands while you walk through Walmart. That might be lighting a candle. That might be, whatever else it is there in your relationship. We want to focus in on these specific areas for 30 days. But there's also another side of this besides just the daily. So we want you to do the daily, but we also want you to give you some things to do weekly. So outside of these 3 things that you're focusing on every day, here's your assignment for the week. So we want you to take an assessment that's basically about 40 questions where you rate these things 1 to 10. And then there's a space for you to rate it for yourself. What do you think 1 to 10? And what do you think your spouse will say on that same 1 to 10 scale? So we want you to do that. We want you to do it alone, by yourself. Set aside a little time. It won't take very long. Set aside a little time. And then later in the week, or by the end of the week, we want you to set aside about an hour with your spouse to sit down. Kids are in bed or kids are gone. You can pull your answers out. You sit there together and say, okay, here's what I said. What did you say? That's either what I expected you to say or it's different based on your numbers. And what will happen here is that this will give you a good opportunity to kind of get your bearings. Oftentimes we think we know where we are. We think we know what our spouse is feeling when we might be wrong. And so this is one way to get the what we think out of here, and let's really talk about it. Let's communicate there. So this gives us a good idea of kind of where are we in our marriage. It also gives you a good way to pray. So as you're praying together, as you're praying for each other, as you notice these kind of areas of concern, it gives you some ways to pray. And then next week we'll talk about how do we deal with these specific areas of concern. And so this is what I mean by area of concern. So if we look at this and that there's some specific question about our spiritual intimacy and how I'm feeling and how Megan's feeling, and I might rate it as an 8 and she might rate it as a 3. And I might think that she thinks it's an 8 and she thinks it's really a 3. And so we've got this kind of 5-point discrepancy there. And so that is an area of concern. So really anything that you rate or your spouse rates kind of lower than a 3, I would look into, kind of zoom in on, or anything where there's a discrepancy of 3, 4, 5 points, between what you thought your spouse was going to say and what they actually said. 1, 2, 3 points is pretty normal. 4, 5, 6, 7 point discrepancy is you're not on the same wavelength. We want to clear that up. So keep working on the daily. Build in some healthy rhythms, reestablish some healthy rhythms, and then sometime this week, let's take this assessment. That's it. So day 2, this is easy. So praying for you guys, and I'll put another one up tomorrow or the next day, and just keep this stuff going. So have a good one.